I have my personal opinion, but I want to hear it from you first. How relevant is the PMP still?
Well, that it's kind of interesting you say that. It kind of depends on the two things, on your own personal desires to capitalize on the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
But second to that is, how does your organization feel about the PMP? Now, in the early days, of course, it became a peer pressure thing. If you didn't have it, you were no good, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're kind of over that hump now to some extent. And organizations that once, IBM, for example, AT&T, Motorola, who embraced the PMP as their own internal certification, they've all backed away from that now, and they'll still support it and sponsor people to go, but it's not nearly as critical to your career as it once was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people,
why do you think that is?
Because we see job ads all the time say PMP required. Well, that's true. I mean, they're going to do that, but that's more of a peer pressure sort of a thing. If you have it, you're okay. If you don't, you suck. And so people have started to realize just having the PMP ain't what it's all about. I tell my people that those of you who think that getting your PMP is the end of the journey, oh man, you're screwed up. It's the beginning of the journey.
Absolutely.
And so what happens is expectations go up. Your performance is under more of a microscope. So I tell people, if you're not ready for that, don't get the PMP, because with it comes a tremendous amount of responsibility.
I'm going to ask you a daring question. This is a question that I often discuss with people when they talk about certification. And you can give me a couple answers, but in order, what do you think is the number one? What should the number one motivation be to get a PMP?
Personally driven, the sense of accomplishment.
Okay.
Because once you begin to understand the PMP, it's pretty heady stuff. I mean, it really gives you what you need as a base for doing a good job as a project manager.
Yeah, common language, common process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, something that, I can change companies and I'm still talking the same language when I get to the other company. And so I think
it gives you career relevance and stability.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn a new language.
It's not the T thing, but here's what I've developed over the last few years. As I tell people, the first thing you do is you get a job. Baby needs shoes. You got a Mercedes. You got a house. But give me a job, okay? Yeah. Well, that job will last you a bit and satisfy you a bit, but pretty soon you're going to go like, is this all there is? And so you then transition to what I call a career. And then by doing that, you say, okay, I did this for 7 years, but I really was never happy with that, but it brought in money. So what would I really like to do? So you transition to a career. Spend a long time in your career motivating yourself, improving yourself. But then the last step in my model is a calling, what I call a calling.
Yeah.
This is what, I mean, I'm in a call. I moved through the phase. I'm at the calling stage. This is what I do. This is what I'm about. This is what I get value out of. And I think if people will begin to look at that, they'll see, well, then there has to be a constant level of improvement. I can't just isolate on, I got my PMP, man, I can relax now. Yeah. No, now you got to show people you know how the hell to use it.
Well, I think that's part of the baked-in philosophy that I don't know whether everybody really understands it, but I think PDUs kind of forces you to deal with it. I love the concept of PDUs because it says, we're not interested in a bunch of Boy Scouts who are going to get a merit badge, who are going to invest maybe 6 weeks of their life learning something by rote memory, and then get a badge on their sleeve, and then never ever deal with the subject matter again. I think that's a great concept. Was that something that you guys came up with when you were developing the certification?
Yeah, I think people never give us credit. They get angry with us for having PDUs, but the fact of the matter was, one of the things we discussed is longevity. How do we sustain the life of this process? And the answer is because the business changes and has certainly gone through many changes. the only way to keep up with that is the idea of PDU, CEU. They've been around forever. It's not like we thought them up.
Yeah.
But the fact of the
But
matter
it's still a great
was,
idea.
it came out clear when Agile came out because, we were waterfall, we were predictive people, and here all of a sudden is this totally new. Although
you're pushing buttons now, Lee.
Yeah, and so
I might give you some pushback on some of those statements, but yeah, I understand where you're going.
You do PDUs. I mean, that's why we invent them. Unfortunately, the PDU thing turned into a numbers game, and I'm very.
There's always a danger of that. There's always people who are gonna look at it from a systematic perspective and put a dogmatic process behind it and try to monetize it. But I don't think that discounts the original meaning. I would agree with you
I think it's the only way a person stays ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
What I tell people when I talk to them is one of the things that paid off for me is thinking a year or 2 years ahead of time, what's going to come down the road. And then by the time it gets there, I was already ready.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to do. They don't understand that. They're still in how many PDUs do I need? It's not about how many PDUs you need. It's what knowledge you need that earns PDU.
Lee, quite honestly, I think if you've embodied and understood the foundational concept behind it, I always jokingly say when people say how difficult is it to get PDUs, I said, I've got so many. Do you want some?
Yeah, me too. I mean, can you imagine how many I get speaking?
I'm sure you could. You're leagues ahead of me.